This week's discussion is about pastoral responsibility. We thought we'd focus in on four topics. The one that was requested in the voice threads were people that we found it easy to have relationships with and people we had problems or we saw might be problematic. And then the concepts of ruthlessness and overfunctioning and shame, particularly as they play out in the book of Daniel. So let's start with the one that was raised in the voice threads. I was really sort of intrigued by this whole idea of responsibility and able to have a response sort of thing as people that, that I connected with somehow or another. And I went back to my teaching days and I was thinking of people that I felt that I could really make a difference in their life somehow. I had a skill or I had something that I could teach them that they didn't already know. And I know that's a little bit different than a pastoral situation, but they seem to be the people that I connected with the most.
Cool. I can go next if that's.
Oh yeah, jump in.
Okay. So in terms of well, I was thinking about it in terms of like which people do I have like a healthy sort of boundaries, healthy balance of my own sense of ruthlessness and reparation and all of that. For me, where I have the healthiest relationships are definitely my female friendships. I think I can be enough of myself with them that, that they don't only know my false self. But I'm not quite comfortable enough to really be as ruthless as I can be. So my false self keeps certain parts of me in check. And that I think allows me to be seen and be encouraged to be my best self.
Mm-hmm.
And so
are you seeing a link between ruthlessness and false self or true self?
Well, true self, yeah, like true self, because it arises, from my actual impulses. My false self would definitely cover up any sense of ruthlessness.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, but in terms of, so yeah, seeing that part of my true self, but then also, believing in the part of my true self that doesn't want to be shaped by my ruthlessness. So, that there's a dual aspect to that. And, my friends we will remind each other, when, for example, our inner critic will take over, we remind each other, are you talking to yourself like you would talk to a good friend? That kind of thing, so it's like, there's a good modeling there. And so, yeah. And wait, are we just talking about the healthy side or the not healthy side?
I just started with healthy, but.
Okay, so we'll circle back to the not healthy.
Fine, yeah. If you want to go there, it's good.
I'm good then. I'm ready to pass the baton.
Okay. Adam, what are you thinking about healthy relationships, healthy boundaries?
Yeah, I think that I was thinking of it just in terms of how when you meet someone, you get a good sense often of whether you think I could hang out with this person or not. So, for me, the things that connect are really a similar sense of humor, right? And someone who's approachable. That's universal, I guess. But that sense in ministry and in other places where you meet someone and you think, yeah, we can have a conversation. We're going to get along. We may not see eye to eye on everything, but there's that immediate sort of, yeah, I love being around this person, right? Instead of, and I'll make the turn if that's all right.
Sure.
You meet other people and you think immediately, the hairs go up on the back of your neck. You think or you think I just don't get where they're coming from. I can't get to their perspective, and this is going to be a challenge for me to get to get past ruthlessness, right? Or eventually maybe we'll have to use my own ruthlessness or authority to move forward. Like, you can see the problems coming sometimes. And I was talking with a friend about that actually in our co-op program. Nate Preisinger talking about that, right? With people in ministry who become roadblocks, and it's easy to kind of let those people you disagree with just be at a distance, or to appease them, or to not kind of take ownership of your anger and move forward. So I don't know, that's kind of how I interpreted Hammond's book to some degree, is taking your anger and using it productively for what you believe God or the church is moving forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to tease apart all of these things, I think, and especially when you put in the false self and the true self there. But it seems to me that the people that I have the hardest time with are people in whom I see myself reflected back, or the things that I fear about myself reflected. I think that was in one of the readings this week. That point was made. The people that I have a hard time with are people that over intellectualize things, and I'm always afraid that I'm doing the same thing, and I try to be on my guard about it. And then I see somebody do it, and yeah, I don't want to be that person, and I don't want to be around that person.
I can relate to that. Yeah, you see it going on, and you're like, oh, that makes me so angry. And then you step back and you think, oh, that's because that's what I'm trying to avoid in myself. So
Yeah.
Yeah, denying myself. Absolutely. Yeah. I even started to make a list of people. It was like, oh my God, this is exactly it. And I can tell you in each one of those people, and it's not a huge long list, but it's people that I see things that I want to avoid, or that I fear are a part of me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, is it my turn? Okay.
Sure. Sorry, I'm not being a very good host tonight. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just since I don't have the camera, like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel it's almost as if, I don't know, it's so weird. It's like I can't, it's like I feel like I can't see you guys either, but I can. I don't know. It's weird. I just don't feel like I'm there in the same way. It's just weird. I did not expect it.
All right.
But anyway, yeah. So yeah, for me, where my boundaries or integration does not work well is sometimes with my family, especially my kids. I know for myself that my own stuff can get triggered with, I mean, this is not new. Parents do this all the time. Their children trigger their own insecurities, their traumas, their whatever, things get triggered, and then I act out of my ruthlessness in ways that I wish I didn't. And so this is where I struggle a lot in terms of I really appreciate what Hammond is trying to do in talking about us having to own our destructiveness. Otherwise, we pretend it's not there, or we ignore it, or we push it down. This is kind of what I wrote about in my response paper. But sometimes I feel like for myself, there might be, I worry, and I don't know if I have an actual tendency about this, or I just worry that that I'll excuse it too much. Right. And then I won't do the actual work, the really, really difficult impulse control work of not getting triggered. Like, I really like how he talks about the capacity of concern, like, imagines and expects reparation. But sometimes I think reparation is about preventing harm as well in the first place.
That's really interesting.
And so, I feel this tension, around that of like, I got to forgive myself on one hand. Like, I have such an inner critic. I can't let that loose. But I have to have some boundaries around my ruthlessness. So how do we live into that tension? Like, that feels really a big question for me.
One of the things that really drove me crazy was the analysis of anger and how you had to have anger or whatever. And I spent a lot of time in my formation process early on with in a situation where a lot of people were victims. They were, and I'm sorry to say it that way, but they always painted themselves in terms of, oh, this terrible thing happened to me and I'm a broken or I'm a wounded healer or whatever. And we were always looking for the wounds and the brokenness in people. And not to say that I don't have brokenness, but that's not what I lead with. That's, I mean, just my style or whatever. And I had the same, I kind of revisited or flashed back to that with this whole thing about unless you acknowledge the anger. And I appreciate the fact that, you know, that can come out in weird ways and can really hurt me and hurt other people in an intense pastoral care situation. But at the same time, I have a hard time, and I know, and it just sounds crazy, but I have a hard time remembering the last time that I was really angry about anything.
Well, you should have kids, Michael, and then
I know, yeah, that's what I need.
Because I had the opposite response, because I mean, and part of it's because I have kids, and I keep telling people, you know, I thought I was a patient person, and then I had kids, and in my you know, psyche eval, that was the thing that they put out there, was that it was positive, but if I don't deal with my anger, it's going to come out in outbursts. And that's something I hadn't even thought about because I'm a quiet, you know, nice guy. So I don't think of myself as anger. So I really related to the examples in the book about holding back anger. But I've been able to start to deal with it myself, because when you have children, I mean, I'm not trying to put you in a place, Michael, but
no, I understand.
It's like you're just frustrated in ways that you never would be if you don't have kids, right? Because all this stuff depends on making sure they're ready for all these different things and time pressure and all this stuff that doesn't really have to do with my own personal life. So it's not, it's dealing with anger that's like, you know, caring for someone makes you angry, right? I guess anyone who cares for another person has known that. So that's how I interpreted it. Like you got to acknowledge it and figure out what to do with it. But I totally get where you're coming from too with the, you know, I've been in groups where you just go around picking out everyone's troubles, and that can get real tiring.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on that section of the discussion? Well, could we look at this concept of ruthlessness? And they talk about how that it's, he didn't say not a politically correct word, but he at least said that this is a difficult topic for most of us to talk about. Is it different than being selfish?
I think so. I think it can be a result of it, but I think it's that impulse to just, I mean, maybe be competitive or to be defensive or protective that comes out in a way that, you know, is naturally harmful. I don't know. Just trying to work through it myself.
Yeah.
No, me too. And I was playing with the idea of, you know, the two great laws, right? You know, love God with your whole heart and love your neighbor as yourself. And ruthlessness seems to be the exact opposite of each of those, sort of, in my mind.
Right. I mean, it implies lack of concern for the other.
Right.
Purely selfish action. And I guess for me, like, the term implies a lack of empathy as well.
Yeah. There's a description and I should have had it pulled out. I should have marked it in the book, but there's a description in one of them that is just like, it is so anathema to everything that I believe and everything that I try to live. And I kept thinking, am I really ruthless? I mean, do I fit any of this definition of ruthlessness? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think for myself, I've noticed times that I am, times that I feel so frustrated and angry at one of my children that I just purely want them to suffer, because I'm at the end of my rope, like,
See, I always had the 3 o'clock or 3:30 when they were leaving. So I had the children until that time, and then I moved them off. So I never got to the end of the rope.
Yeah, but I do think what I do really appreciate is like the unflinching honesty of like just saying, yeah, there are parts of me that are like that. In the same way how it's helpful, to acknowledge white privilege, right? And to say, yeah, I'm racist, and we don't have to necessarily like, I'm not consciously choosing my ruthlessness, and I'm not consciously choosing my white privilege, but and those are sort of two different examples, but
no, I think it's great. I think it's a great comparison. Yeah.
Right, yeah, but we still act upon them in ways that perhaps we might not necessarily choose if we had like deliberative opportunities.
Right.
But when they do happen, we have to figure out, like, we just have to recognize that they're there. Like, it doesn't do anybody any good to say that they don't exist, right?
Oh,
because
absolutely.
as soon as they do exist, then you can move on to reparation, right? Like, and I think that's a valuable way to think about it, because you can't imagine reparation if you're pretending that the ruthlessness has not happened or is not happening. Yeah, so I appreciate the honesty of it.
There's that moment where they refer to where the kid is like, do I want to eat this like a regular human being, or do I want to throw it down? I mean, there's that moment of decision that I think kind of played out in my mind to lots of decisions that we make. Do I want to react right away? And I probably would react more ruthlessly, but I don't know. Over the years, I just think I've become a lot more, I don't know what the right word is, but I mean, deliberative, I guess, in how I interact with other people. I don't know. I don't want to come off sounding like a saint, because like white privilege, you picked a great example for me. Like, I think I just have been so convicted of that, and maybe I'll get to be more convicted of my own ruthlessness eventually. So. Do we want to switch to Book of Daniel at all, or do we want to try over functioning?
One more comment on that, which was that what I do feel like in the Hammond text, it didn't necessarily reflect what I believe is that while I do think it's really important to own what is true and real about our own natures, I didn't feel like he articulated a positive trajectory for human nature, right? And so, like, it's not good to disown parts of ourselves, but I do think that over time, it is possible to transform our personalities so that we are less ruthless. Like, maybe it is impossible to become, a saint, but I really do think transformation is possible, and I didn't necessarily get that from the way Hammond was articulating this. And I think he was maybe intentionally trying to come down on the side of naturalizing the experience as an antidote to shame, and that's really important. But I missed the optimism, I think, of of imagining ourselves in better, and that can also be like a tyranny. Like, expectations of how we should be better is also a tyranny of its own kind. So, like, there are extremes for sure on both sides. So yeah, as always, the answer is always a balance, right?
You got it. Adam, any last thoughts before we lose you to a
oh no
failing battery?
Notice the comment.
Oh, maybe he's gone already.
Oh, ruh-roh. Oh yeah, it's a frozen picture.
Oh dear. All right, well, we're on our own for the last little bit here, so
okay.
Do you have any thoughts about Book of Daniel you want to?
Yes, let me try and remember. I took notes, but I'm trying to remember what
thought the interaction with the bishop was really interesting, always, all the way through the female bishop.
Yeah.
And just where that all belongs in terms of, is there a capacity for concern there? Is she fulfilling her pastoral responsibilities to Daniel or not?
Right. Right. Yeah, there really was not any sense that there was any kind of, well, okay, maybe I'm overstating, but yeah, definitely it seemed more self-serving. It seemed more administrative, certainly, than it did pastoral.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you watch the fourth part with the little girl seeing Jesus?
No.
Okay.
I'm only up to episode 2.
Well, I know that's where we were supposed to be, but then with that weird message about going to the fourth one, and she asked a question about a triad that's in the fourth.
Right. Yeah. You mean towards the end of the
Arthur and Jean.
lecture?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I made a note
I
of
guess
it, and I went and watched it. But the long and the short of it is, there's a brief period of time where Daniel can't see Jesus.
Oh, okay.
10. And I don't want to give you all the spoilers, but I thought it really fit in well with this whole idea of shame and kind of like losing something that he thought made him pretty special. So that was kind of interesting, but we won't go there since you didn't see it.
Okay.
How about your notes?
I was noticing, like, just in terms, thinking about how we were looking at the Ally McBeal clips, and so I sort of had the same hat on in his counseling clips, and I was noticing how people do seem to seek him out, right? But at the same time, he's very directive, obviously, right? This is a TV show, and they have to dramatize and speed it up and everything. So there's not a lot of listening going on for the sake of the narrative.
Yeah.
But he was extremely directive in a lot of the situations. So I made a note of that. And personally too, because I think that I might have a tendency to become directive out of anxiousness. So I do actually really appreciate the readings that we've been doing. Not the not Hammond, but the other ones.
Yeah.
Because they've been really helpful in just reminding me what I do know about counseling techniques, and it's really only my anxiety that gets in the way of those. So if I can just be aware of that, I think goes a long way.
It struck me reading not the listening chapter, but the other chapter, that there's just so much to this pastoral care communication. It's like all of this stuff that I've taught for my entire life to kids now all of a sudden means something very, very important.
Ooh, Adam's back.
Adam is back. Yay. It's like applying those communication principles that I taught in general to people in a real high stakes sort of situation. So I just really, it struck me as how awesome the task is. Adam, you're back. Yay.
Hooray.
I'm back.
We're on to kind of
downloaded Hangouts on my phone. So
you're the man.
Oh, cool.
That's great. So we were just talking a little bit about Book of Daniel to wrap things up. Is there anything struck you, any notes or anything you wanted to add?
Let me check my notes.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Did we see Daniel being ashamed, functioning out of shame? I think maybe with his dad a little bit.
Yeah. And and the self-medication too, like, he's trying to play it off as no big deal.
Yeah.
So, which is probably connected to his shame around it.
But Jesus knows better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, with his dad, I was really struck by that. Shame and not really confronting him about his son, and his dad's a jerk, man. I don't know.
Totally.
Yeah, I was really struck by that.
Right. But of course they try to make him a little bit relatable, right? Like his wife, the narrative with his wife and her sickness and, like,
Yeah.
that's sad. There's layers of pain, right? You can see that there's layers of pain going on. But yeah, I wouldn't want him to be my dad.
Right. Yeah. What do you make of the relationship? And maybe this is just a curiosity question, but the weirdness of the two women being together, the man who's lost, and lost with the money or whatever, the sister of, I don't know the names, I'm sorry, but at the end of the second episode, they're having, tea together, sort of, and Daniel's out going, "What the heck is going on here?"
Yeah, I mean, there were a few moves here where, like, TV show, right? I mean, it's illustrative of a lot of things, but you kind of just had to swallow that all of these things are happening in one family at one time. Certainly, every family has a lot of issues, but yikes.
Yeah. I'd be taking Vicodin if I were.
That's right.
Sure doesn't want to make me want to be an Episcopal priest.
Yeah.
No worries there. So, all right.
I don't know if you talked.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. I just don't know if you talked about, but I was a little taken aback when, he's counseling these two on marriage, and the man comes by jogging and he just lets him into his house. I'm not sure I'd be ready to allow that kind of access to people I'm counseling, but
yeah,
I was struck by that.
Well, and his whole, like, here's what we do, sort of, here, this is my wife, and I know that was kind of like
boundaries.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Some boundary issues going on for somebody who's seems to be very experienced.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking that too. I mean, and obviously I think it's for narrative purposes, right? Somebody who has really good boundaries is probably just really boring,
Yes.
TV show. So
I'll take it. The fire department has gone by here and, like, really, really loud, so that's why I was on mute for a little bit. Anything else anybody wants to add?
Well, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about his relationships with his kids, and I'm not sure where I stand with them, because for the most part, they actually seem to be like pretty healthy relationships, and he kind of lets them be who each of them are. But at the same time, I can't shake like this little feeling of like, I don't know, like, I don't know. I don't know how to articulate the sense that, well, there is definitely some, I guess, there's identity all mashed up in there that we see in the first scene of the very first episode, right? When their daughter is arrested, right? And that's a big deal in terms of his identity as a priest and how he wants her to act. But then he does give them a lot of latitude to be themselves. So
I don't think he flips out nearly as much as you might have expected him to if it was all, invested in who he is,
right.
Yeah. Whatever. I think you're onto something there in terms of allowing the children to do and be who they are and not being particularly troubled about it. I worry about the wife. I have to tell you. I mean, there's a whole lot of weird stuff going on there with her drinking, and yet they seem okay. And she seems.
I'm with you.
Go for it, Adam.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. My phone's not as good as my computer, I guess. I don't know if it's poor writing, or there were a few times where I just don't believe the wife at all. I just think this is, and maybe because she's so different than my wife, but I just very inauthentic kind of relationship. I don't know. I don't see them. They seem to be like business partners who have sex on Friday night. I don't know. I don't see much of a rapport, or I don't know. Maybe I'm just being critical of the television program. And
I think it's right. I think that the relationships with the kids are much more fleshed out and make much more sense to me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think you're right too, that, or Shadow's right, that yeah, there's something, you expect him to react in a way that he's not reacting. There's a lot of non-reacting going on.
Yes. I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like he's almost too good a parent. And I'm just like, I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah.
I mean, for somebody who's also like self-medicating in the way he is, like, I don't know. I feel like the relationships would need to be like a little more messed up to warrant that. You know?
I guess maybe that's why he's so permissive.
Exactly. Maybe he's real chill.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, but I wouldn't change places with him.
No.
No thanks. So.
Sure.
Okay, guys. Well, unless there's something else really wonderful hanging out there, we'll stop the broadcast and pick it up next week. Huh?
Okie dokie.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks a lot, guys.